Hi, I'm so happy that you all are joining us today for Crafting Connections, Increasing Social Competence for Individuals with ASD. So my name is Janet Enriquez, and I'm a board certified behavior analyst, and I'm a PhD student at University of North Carolina, Charlotte. So I do want to say that no matter what age your loved one with ASD um, may have, this is a topic that is important and you should consider at every age. So the CDC quotes about 1 in 59 children today have been identified with autism spectrum disorder. So that means that 1% of our population in the US, ages 3 to 17, have an autism spectrum disorder diagnosis. Autism, at the average, costs a family about $60,000 a year. We already know that boys are nearly 5 times more likely than girls to have an autism diagnosis. We know that there are 1 in 44 boys that receive the diagnosis of autism. 1 in 189 girls are impacted with ASD. So this is certainly a concern. This is often referred to as the triad of symptoms in autism spectrum disorder, and this came through in and presented to us by Lorna Wing um, in the late 1970s, and this continues to be something that we are that we take note of. So we know that primarily the areas of autism that we often look to enhance or ameliorate involve restrictive and repetitive behaviors, communication or language, and then, of course, what we're concerned about today, those social skills, which encompass a variety of different things that we'll be talking about. So as we start our time together, it's important to really think about research on social development and what that might look like. So without support, a lot of our students with ASD present challenges in a variety of different skill sets, from starting a conversation to perhaps inviting peers to play, right? Um, Being able to respond and act accordingly when they go to a party, joining in activities with their friends, keeping up with games, right? And understanding those intricate rules that are tied to games. And without these skills, without the refining of these skills and being able to respond to these changing situations and environments, many of our children experience decreased employment at a later age. So these lack of social relationships can lead to these things, a decreased independent living statistics for many of our individuals, a decreased life expectancy, and lots of challenges with mental health, right? That can include different types of concerns that are related to just well-being, that just mental health and well-being. Um, the statistics that we have for adults with an autism diagnosis are not great. And I can tell you from experience, I have a 22-year-old brother with an autism diagnosis, that those are concerns that I have every day for him. He lives with me. Those are concerns that my parents have for him. And these are things that we should be thinking about, not when they're 12, 15, 18, but from the very beginning. These should be our concerns. So how does that also impact relationships, right? Friendships? Well, there's absolutely an impact in these areas, as we are aware in regards to those characteristics that are very specific, right, to an autism diagnosis. Often individuals with autism may have challenges in providing a continuous, stable relationship with their friends, even. That certainly can impact self-worth and self-esteem, and many of them might not feel that sense of belonging that can reinforce continuing to be in a relationship. Um, Similarly, they may have difficulty providing that reciprocity with somebody else, like providing companionship and being affectionate with others and providing that emotional support that another person might need in very specific times, which absolutely can lead to limited opportunities to share intimate feelings of hopes and fears and their interest to connect with another individual. As human beings, we seek to connect to others, and sometimes our loved ones with an autism diagnosis can find that a little bit difficult to do. Those are more complicated, deeper, um, um, emotions that can sometimes be challenging. Um, Without these types of skill sets, it can be a very confusing time. And um, these kinds of skills and behaviors, social behaviors, really help us connect with the social world that's around us. It helps us connect with our family members. It helps us connect with our friends, and it really helps create a sense of self. So all of these social communicative types of behaviors really are vital to our mental health, our well-being, and really build a bridge to having access to other people, environments, and opportunities and experiences. So these are things that are vitally important for us to be considerate of and wanting for us to build in our students and our children. As we think about those skills that are necessary to make friends, um, there are quite a few of those skills that are necessary, and um, Asher and colleagues have identified a few that involve sharing, the ability to compromise, consider another person's perspective, which is incredibly important, companionship, empathy, being able to be empathetic to another individual, being able to problem solve and engage in conflict resolution, being able to demonstrate reliability with another person, and lastly, the ability to exchange your feelings, which can be challenging. The research that we have that's related to autism and social skill development um, is pretty clear that in regards to supporting social skill development and social competencies for individuals with autism, it is not enough to simply physically integrate an individual with autism into a general education classroom. So simply because I provide an individual an opportunity to be around, right, or surrounded by uh, peers that are neurotypical or that are non-disabled, that does not mean that social skills are going to inherently develop on their own. That's not necessarily going to be the case. So we really do have to be more aware of not falling into those traps. Um, we often find that it is challenging for individuals with disabilities to sometimes connect to those nuances that are their peers' social groups, right? And because of those things, because they don't understand the hidden curriculum of things that are understood and not said, they often are victims of bullying, right? So that victimization rates for individuals with autism can be pretty high. So there's high levels of bullying, and it is not uncommon for individuals with autism to perhaps, you know, find themselves perhaps being more solitary, so eating alone at lunch, or not maybe working with a group and things of that nature. So the research tells us that these are areas that absolutely need to be supported so those things don't continue to happen. We are also aware that um, during those moments of the day that present to be less structured, so research that is directly related to moments like lunchtime and recess, those things that are unstructured opportunities, there is increased rates of isolation and low engagement. So when our kids are not engaging in, you know, activities that that are occupying them, they're likely to be by themselves and might be engaging in either maybe self-stimulatory types of behaviors or low engagement activities, which we probably don't want to see. Um, these are also moments, right? The moments that are more unstructured. These are also moments in which we will see less initiation occurring from them. So because there's no one to facilitate these in these types of things for them, they're probably not going to be initiating these opportunities on their own. And if we recall and we consider those characteristics of autism, well, that's one of the challenges and hallmarks of individuals with autism. The challenge is regarded to initiating interactions, right, and communication with others. So it's important for us to remember that. And lastly, um, Lee Odom and Lofton have reported that uh, these during these moments they may not respond appropriately if they are approached by a peer. So it might be an inappropriate response, uh, by them. If these moments have not been rehearsed, if they've not been practiced, if they have not been presented to them in the past, then we also find that these unstructured opportunities like recess, like lunchtime, like hall passing time, um, these are moments in which individuals with ASD could respond inappropriately when they're initiated, when there's initiations brought upon by peers. So all in all, our result here is not a positive one. Um, the research that we have in regards to social opportunities right now is not always so great, which leads us to really need to consider some of those evidence-based practices and resources in how we can better craft those connections for our individuals with autism. How can we increase the social competency for individuals with autism so there is not an adverse result like isolation, like victimization, like anxiety, or like feeling depressed? These are things that we do not want for our learners or our children. And there are absolutely resources and steps that we can take to ensure that that does not happen. So we're going to be sharing a few of those intervention approaches that you want to consider in regards to crafting those connections and opportunities and competency for your loved ones. So we're going to think about first approaches based on the principles of applied behavior analysis. And one of the reasons that we're also going to be considerate of this is because we know that the science is there, right? The science supports this. And we want to promote these healthy relationships for our learners and our loved ones. Um, and we also want to engage in that peer sensitivity and awareness to promote that understanding through student education and immersion. So, in order for us to be considerate of social skills programs and interventions, we want to ensure that they have a few features. So, effective social skill interventions and programs. These are programs and interventions that are demonstrated to occur across multiple naturalistic activities. So, we want to ensure that these programs, these interventions, these strategies have been effective for our children in the home, in the school, and in the community, right? In the most naturalistic settings. We also want to be considerate of those that have been um, peer mediated. And that means that these are interventions that have also been um, brought on by their friends, by their peers, by their neurotypical peers, and that can be supported by their peers. We're considerate of how frequent these interventions are and how motivating and child directed the programs present, as well as how they also are inclusive of cooperative arrangements. You know, are we also considerate of families and how families can implement these interventions in their homes, right? And lastly, how are these mutually reinforcing? So, how do these benefit not only our learner, but perhaps the interventionists, right? So, how do they benefit mom, dad, and siblings or same age peers, right? As well. The benefits for individuals with ASD when we implement these interventions and strategies really are plenty. Um, by considering these evidence-based practices, we are increasing peer initiations for many of our individuals with autism. We're increasing and enhancing those reciprocal interactions. So this means that we're not just helping our individuals initiate, but we're being able to build that reciprocity, that back and forth, so that initiation and that response. We're also working on peer acceptance, which is necessary, and participation in community, right? So we're increasing the opportunities that our individuals have within their local community. We additionally are providing them with increased opportunities to practice these skills and generalize them across a variety of different individuals and environments. And lastly, we're increasing engagement. They're engaged within uh, uh, behaviors that are beneficial for them, that are socially significant, and that will provide them access to far more greater things, which is always good. And we want to remember that the benefits of these types of programs, empirically based programs, also decreases the stigma that's tied to some of these behaviors. It's stigmatizing behaviors, which are related to victimization and isolation. So those are those things that we want to decrease. And by now you're probably wondering, well, how do I start this type of social skills program? Well, we're going to talk about 5 different steps that you want to be considerate of. We want to ensure that the first thing that you do is that you assess and identify strengths and needs, right? So what are those strengths that we currently have, and what are those areas of need that we want to target? And then we'll look at identifying those goals, right? So, what are my targets? What am I going to be working on? And then third, what type of intervention do I want to put in place? What is this going to look like? we can't implement an intervention without beginning data collection. So collecting data to monitor and evaluate progress is going to be essential, as well as our last step, ensuring that we teach across all settings, which promotes generalization of skills, which will eventually demonstrate mastery. So first, it is important for us to recognize the need. It's important for us to be comfortable with data-driven decision making, right? And be able to speak to that. So assessing the student is going to be our first step. So where are they now, right? What are those current needs? That's what we need to start off with. It is important, and it's highly recommended that you collect some sort of baseline data to kind of give us an idea of how things are right now. You could absolutely look at an individualized education plan to 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 help you do that. Really look at that specific goal, right? And that specific service delivery, which we'll be talking a little bit about next, right? But that part is going to be essential to setting up your program. And then we're just going to start considering the assessment for social skills training, right? So in regards to objectives, determining what social skills need to be addressed is going to be our first objective here. Determining what would the most effective teaching strategies be would be under that as well. And then lastly, what are those most effective teaching modalities, right? So what are we teaching? What are our targets? What's going to be the most effective way to teach those targets? And lastly, how am I going to be teaching it? What type of modality is going to be best? And by modality, we can be considerate of a few things. It can be one-on-one instruction, small group, right? Maybe it's going to be through virtual opportunities, telehealth. So there's different modalities in that. In regards to beginning your assessment, there are a few choices, and they can include all of these. We can implement a teacher checklist or interview that I will provide samples all of this of these for you all, just so you all can have a guide. We can certainly provide a parent interview to help us guide our way, and a student interview. And then lastly, which is always recommended, is an observation. That would probably be your ideal, packet. So I'll provide you all with these resources just as guides, and these aren't going to be the only things that you can use, but these can certainly be pointing you in the right direction, or at least get you started. So as you think about your IEP social skills goal, this goal should be individualized to meet the needs, right, of your student and those abilities of your student. So this is a sample IEP goal right here, which I probably would also be considerate of, and I would definitely want to ask some more information about this goal. So the sample IEP goal states, student will interact with typical peers 85% of the time during lunch, recess, and other less structured times of the day. And at first glance, the IEP goal doesn't sound too bad. However, there are lots of questions to be asked. So, first of all, what does interact really look like? So it's operationalizing that word and really being aware of what you want the student to do. And that kind of really helps us guide ourselves with that IEP. So maybe I want the student to engage in conversational exchanges. So I might want to say the student will engage in how many conversational exchanges with maybe one peer. Maybe I don't want to do a percentage rate, and maybe I want to just start off maybe with one uh, location and not all of those, and maybe gradually work myself up. So there are absolutely more conversations to be had, and always think about individualizing these goals. So the sample goals that we have here, we would typically want to work through these together in a group. Um, but what I want to highlight for you all is really be aware of when we are thinking about these social skill goals, we want to think about perhaps increasing exchanges, initiations, duration of engagement, right? Perhaps increasing reciprocal conversations or cooperative play with groups. So um, be considerate of those top lines a little bit more and how those could really be individualized for the needs of your learners or loved ones. And absolutely also decreasing maybe prompts to engage in an activity could also be something that we're considerate of. So as we start going into those areas of what to teach in our social skills training, these again are just suggestions. So we want to first take note of our individual learners' needs. So doing that assessment with your learner or your loved one is going to be imperative, right? So I will be providing you all with a few resources that you guys can consider for assessment purposes, just checklists or interviews that you can consider, and that will help kind of guide the program for you. So a few examples of skills to teach can range anything from sharing and turn taking to initiating interactions to responding appropriately to greetings and play, bringing up appropriate topics and reciprocal conversations, which is always something to work on, attention to facial expressions and body language, respecting personal boundaries and space, eye contact, sustaining eye contact, if that's something that's a skill that's necessary, appropriate comments and questions, and asking about others' interests and listening skills. So I will also be providing you all with these resources in regards to these areas. And again, these are just sample areas. So in supporting sharing and turn taking for learners, there are so many different types of resources and materials that can be used. And I'm just sharing a few with you guys. So I'll be sharing these resources as PDF documents that you all can access. So there's all kinds of wall panels and visual cues that can support sharing and turn taking. From sharing and turn taking in play type of environments to sharing and turn taking in conversational exchanges to sharing and turn taking playing table games and board games with other people. Um, so these are all different kinds of contexts, right, that we engage in sharing and turn taking behavior. So keep that in mind as we start thinking about the age ranges of our loved ones and our learners that we're supporting. So when I was a teacher, when I was in the classroom, I always wondered, I was a first year teacher, and I wondered why I would always read a lot of IEP goals that were based on board games. And I quickly learned how essential and how valuable learning how to play a board game or a card game could be, because it taught turn taking. And we engage in turn taking and having conversations with other people and just exchanging interactions with others. So that's a very valuable skill. So really think about how you can incorporate those opportunities early on. Um, so these are just some of these resources that I'm going to be sharing with you guys in regards to sharing and turn taking. It builds a nice foundation for many of our learners because it it encompasses all of the reciprocity behavior that we want to see. Now, if we're supporting perhaps a learner that has a moderate, right, to advanced verbal repertoire, like language skills, they're a little bit more, advanced, then we might want to hone in on turn taking in conversations, which is another great area of support that you can also use a variety of different resources from um, print resources to video modeling to games to visual cues to props, right? So I encourage you guys to check out autismteachingstrategies.com. Joel Shaw is a licensed clinical social worker, and he has a lot of great free resources on his website that are very specific to social communication and engagement. So he does a really fantastic job at using props to demonstrate these types of skills and the need to make them a little bit more concrete because they're so abstract. So he talks about how we can use a balance to become aware of a conversation's rhythm and how it should go back and forth and flow and be balanced, right? If you say something, I say something, right? And we go back and forth. So it doesn't become, unbalanced, right? He also uses a lot of visuals to demonstrate these things like pie charts. So that's going to be something that you want to check out. I encourage you guys to check him out. One of the things that we know as we're supporting individuals with autism is that um, there's a nice chunk of research that tells us that visual processing it might be something that we want to look into, right? It might be something that we want to take into consideration. Uh, the visual processing for individuals with ASD is is pretty cool. So whenever you can, you want to support your information sharing, whatever content you're delivering, however, whatever you want to teach, you want to support it with a visual. Often when we say something, it's gone. Once we say it, we can never get that back again. But if we have a visual in our in front of us, right, or if it's available to us, we'll be able to go back and reference that visual. So if there's any opportunity that you can make something visual, I would encourage you to do this. So these are just some examples of some wall panels that have been used before to illustrate these points. The one with the chains, right, goes into describing how putting these links together to make a chain is like a conversation. So we add a link, so we add a comment, right, to make that conversation longer and stronger and to keep it going. So it's a way that helps individuals with ASD visualize these concepts that can be pretty abstract. So these are just some of those ideas for you guys to be considerate of as we're supporting those social skill repertoires for individuals with ASD. Earlier, we talked about how initiating interactions could be challenging. You want to also be aware that at any age, right, this can be a concern and a valid concern. So I will also be sharing some PDF resources with you all in regards to initiating conversations or interactions. I'm sorry, interactions, right? So these are some really nice ideas. One of them is also coming from Autism Teaching Strategies, Joe Shaw, that involves the conversation box. And this is a game. So a lot of his resources are games, so it's gamified instruction that involves practicing having a reciprocal conversation with a partner. These are really nice activities to do in groups, or even do this maybe as a family with maybe even siblings, right? I'm also going to be including some nice resources that support interactions with other peers and building a friend file and what that looks like and how you can increase the likelihood of understanding those steps that are involved in having conversations with others. There's also a very nice visual graphic on a conversation map that I will be sharing with you all. So these are things that could be done in group sessions or group activities, or they could be done one-on-one. As a teacher, I've done both. And then we have responding appropriately, right, to greetings and play. So you might have experienced that sometimes individuals with our learners with autism may not know how to respond to a situation or a conversation if they have not experienced it before. So developing this novel language and being able to problem solve, and troubleshoot, right, and negotiate these things in the moment can be hard. So uh, having an opportunity to kind of practice, right, appropriate greetings and situations could be beneficial. So there's going to be a few resources that are all about how do I engage in others and provide compliments to someone. How if this happens, what am I supposed to do? Like scenario cards, right? So there's a variety of different resources that involve scenario cards and problem solving skills. As our kids get older, again, that's a skill set that is necessary, and we might look over that is considered to be part of that hidden curriculum, that there may not be specific lesson plans, right, that are developed to address those areas. So this can involve the use of speech bubbles and comics to kind of really think about what the other person might be thinking when this is happening, right? So this is where we start seeing more perspective taking coming in, right? This is where we can maybe start building in those empathy goals and objectives, right? That we might be concerned about. And then we're having that leads us into bringing up appropriate topics and reciprocal conversation. So there's also opportunities where we find that, well, maybe that wasn't something that we should have said, right? Maybe there was not a filter for that one, or maybe you can say that but not in this moment, right? So earlier we talked about context and how context is very important. So this is something, again, that you might want to be considerate of with your older kids, or even with your kids that have more challenges with some of those nuanced social communication behaviors. And so this utilizes more visual representations to get that message across on appropriateness of conversations and topics, and how your behavior can impact another person's behavior, and what we should be more considerate of. So I will also be sharing some Venn diagrams that you could use that can help kind of illustrate that, as well as the all about me activities that kids can also work on together, maybe in pairs, or you can do that as a small group too. We additionally are aware of the challenges that many individuals with autism may experience in attention to facial expression and body language. After all, that's a characteristic of ASD. So it is important for us to really work on those facial expression and body language identification, right? And what that could possibly mean. Now, nothing really takes the place of, you know, um, natural learning opportunities, but this can certainly be something that we can do to support those as well. So I'll be providing you all with a few PDF documents of different situational like different scenarios, along with individuals making different types of facial expressions and demonstrating different body language, in which learners are prompted to um, answer a couple of questions, right? So, what do you think is going on here? So, those are a little bit more advanced questions in regards to emotions and body language. And but then we'll also have opportunities to really see resources that are just introductory. So, matching facial expressions with maybe an emotion, um, things of that nature. And then also being considerate of their own feelings and their own emotions and body language, and being able to read that, and make those connections for themselves. So in regards to supporting their self-awareness, I'll be also sharing autism teaching strategies worksheets from CBT sessions. So these are cognitive behavior therapy worksheets that Joel Shaw provides as well, that can help really support that too. Respecting personal boundaries and space is another area that often individuals with ASD we might be considering to support. So this can range from understanding other people's personal space and knowing, when is it appropriate to reach out to someone, right? And right now, it's probably not at all appropriate, right? Because of our current pandemic crises. Um, so it's important that, we also have conversations about that. All of these resources, of course, were pre-COVID, but understanding personal space and space bubble and what that looks like for them is going to be important, as it also helps them become comfortable with telling somebody when they're not comfortable, right? Being able to say no to others too. So I'll be sharing resources in regards to that. I will also be including some resources supporting eye contact and what that means. I will say that one of just in my experiences working with children from 2-3 years old all the way to adults, in their 30s, is that often uh, I I rarely sat completely directly in front of an individual. Um, so be very respectful of how they would like to sit and honor their decisions. I would often, you know, maybe sit to one side. It's so it depends on the individual, so you want to ask those questions. Additionally, there's going to be some wall panels that are related to um, keeping on track with the teacher and listening to the teacher, and where your eyes should be, and where um, how you should be listening and paying attention, things like that during class. But all of those things are, again, they're very relative to the moment and the context, so those can absolutely change. These are some social narratives that I will be also providing with you for you. Social narratives are an additional tool to use, or resource that can be used to enhance some of the skills that we're introducing. And this provides a learner with a social, a story component that has an additional visual piece added to it to introduce a behavior that might be targeted, or a social skill that might be targeted. So there's a variety of social narratives out there that we want to be considerate of, as well as power cards. So power cards are similar to social narratives in that they have a story component to them and a visual. The only difference with our power card is that we are solely identifying an illustration, right? An interest, a special interest of the individual. And we're using that special interest to build on that targeted behavior or skill set. So this is just a very quick guide to developing a power card. That you, if you're interested in developing a power cards fall under the same evidence-based practice of social narratives, if you're interested in that. And these are some sample power cards that I will also be including for you guys if you're wanting to just have a sample of what that could look like. These are just some samples. You want to take into consideration your child or your learner's special interest and use that special interest as the basis of your power card and how you want to introduce your targeted behavior or skill. Additionally, there's all kinds of flowcharts and reward systems that can be used. When we use these types of reward systems, you also want to ensure that they're individualized. So take into consideration your learner or your loved one and make sure that you know what they like and what they're motivated by, and we can use those resources. So this is just something funny for you guys. If we were together and we were actually having a workshop together, I would provide you guys with laminators and laminating film and all of the printouts available, and you could laminate things. Until we're able to do that, I can only send you, this guy right here through the computer. So I apologize, but I want to thank you all for joining us. And this is my contact information. If you have any questions, this is how you can get a hold of me. And we will be sharing the resources with you guys, so you guys can download all of these resources and print these out if you'd like. And feel free to contact us if you have any questions. Thanks so much. Have a great one, guys.